All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to this week's NIM community call. Sorry for skipping the previous episode. It's lovely to be back, and also it's lovely to have such a great guest with me. How's it going, Sachin?
Always good to be here, Sudo. I think it's been so long since I came on one, so really nice to be back on
Been
the
a
community call.
it's been a hot minute. Do you want to introduce yourself to the community for those who may not know you?
Yes, sure. So I consider myself the resident degen at NIM. So most of my work involves around the blockchain. So we have this project called Nix. If you are like really new to the project, it's our blockchain. So it's essentially what keeps the ledger of your NIM token. So if you have NIM tokens and if it's still in your wallet and if nobody has stolen it, it's probably because there is a blockchain which is keeping that process alive and producing blocks for all of our smart contracts. So I mostly do things around blockchain, maintaining the infrastructure for the blockchain. So you might have bridge your tokens to Osmosis or a Gravity bridge. There are things like relayers which we need. So I do things around blockchain, and when things are not around blockchain, I build apps, particularly apps like Governator, to try and maybe like add utility to the overall project. So that's a bit about me.
Excellent. We'll touch on many of these things that Sachin just mentioned during this call. So stay tuned, everyone. As usual, we're going to do a Q&A after we're done with the main portion of this call. So make sure to leave your questions in the chat. If you have any questions for Sachin or myself, then we're going to be keeping an eye on the live chat. And also, as usual, we're of course also keeping an eye on the NIM Matrix server. So you can leave your questions on the general channel of the name matrix server in case you don't want to compromise your privacy and don't want to log in with your YouTube account. Now, with that said, before we get into our main topics, I wanted to ask you about your background. What's up with your background?
Okay, I see there are some jokes coming out of that already. So it's from this show called Severance. If you guys have not watched it, I highly recommend you watch it. It's one of a kind. So Severance for the win.
Actually, I
I'm
just
not going to spoil it for you guys, so you just have to watch the trailer and then figure out.
he just shielded for me to before the call, so now it's on my list. So I actually also have to watch it. Um, As for me, I chose the Dark Forest, partly because we're going to be mentioning a project which, in its sort of symbolism, is very much like in line with the Dark Forest. You will know when it comes up, and also because Dark Forest is one of my favorite, not likely, but still one of my favorite solutions to the Fermi paradox. Um, Sachin, do you know what the Fermi paradox is?
You can explain it to me now.
Yeah. The Fermi paradox is basically, so when we started looking at, um, we had like better and better telescopes, and we started looking out and saw in space all the galaxies and stars. Um, it became sort of like almost obvious that there must be a whole bunch of life out there, and if there's a lot of life, then some of it at least must be intelligent. And basically, the Fermi paradox boils down to the question: um, where are they? Where are all the aliens? Where are all the alien, like intelligent alien civilizations? And there are many possible explanations to this. Um, and one of them is the dark forest theory, which states, or dark forest hypothesis, which states that there are actually a lot of alien civilizations out there, but they are all hostile and they are hiding. Basically, they don't want to give off any signs of life, or they don't want to show their location or that they exist because they are afraid of more advanced and more like predatory civilizations would wipe them out. It's not very likely, but it's still like it makes for good sci-fi. Um, did you see the three-body problem, Sachin?
I did. I was so fascinated by it, and then I started reading about the physics behind it. I was just mind blown. Like it's crazy how some of these series comes, and then you start looking back at what it actually is, and it ends up blowing your mind, right? So there are some really good series like that which I watched. Westworld, for example, was something which was revealing to me. And some of the casting and even some of the dialogues, it really hits home. Where you ask, like, I think there's this specific dialogue called "If you can't really tell, does it matter?" And it's so I mean, it's so. I mean, if you look at it in the age of 2025, we have AI and Gen AI coming in, and then we don't even know where we're going in the next 10 years. Um, what if you come to a point where you can't tell what's real and what's fake anymore? It's food for thought, but then it's scary to look at it at the
It's
same
very
time.
scary, and it's already happening. If you look around, there are like these really nice groups online. And the only thing they post there is basically people believing, mostly older people believing that AI slop is real, and there are some like really crazy examples. Um, at least we can
Yeah.
have some fun while the world is like burning and crashing down. Anyways, at the risk of fully getting derailed, I will also add that not only the physics behind three body problem is absolutely fascinating and really crazy, um, but also the story of the books. The three body problem is based on a series of books, and I can't remember the exact story enough to give it justice and summarize it, but there was some really crazy things around selling the rights of that book and some revenge taken by the original author of the book. Wait, no, it was not the author, but it was the one person at the company which bought the rights. I'm not gonna spoil it, guys. Look it up. It's like it's probably even crazier than the actual story of the book itself. Anyways, now that we have that out of the way, all kind of sci-fi talk and all of that good stuff. Um, let's get into the meat and potatoes. I thought maybe we could start with the Governator. This is something new, and this is of course work by Sachin, which I was super duper happy about. This is something that I've been looking forward to implement some kind of like a structured, proper way to do governance at NIM. If you guys remember the previous way we did governance, which was basically on the forum with like this solution bolted together by a bunch of different terrible workarounds. Well, yeah, so that was not great, and I'm really happy that now we have this actual tool with some on-chain features even to do governance. But before we get into the Governator itself, I thought maybe we take it a bit more basic for those who may be watching this who are not very familiar with governance and what it actually means and what decentralized governance is. So what is governance and how does it work, in the Cosmos ecosystem and beyond?
Right. So to put governance simply, it's just your ability to take decision in a decentralized network, right? Especially if you're looking at in the context of a blockchain, because of the decentralized nature of the chain, there is no one person who controls the chain. You have to have some sort of a mechanism where people have to come together and form what we call consensus, right? So I mean, if you compare it to like the real life scenario, you look at it in terms of geopolitics, you have parliaments where people come together to make decision, and that's like a centralized way of doing it, right? And then when we had the same similar problem in blockchain and how do we make decisions and how we come to consensus, the concept of on-chain governance was born. So there are like different ways of doing on-chain governance. I think the most popular one, or at least what Cosmos does, is based on delegated proof of stake. So in proof of stake systems, what happens is you have tokens, and then you have these nodes called validators. Um, is the same as what we have. Like we have a Cosmos blockchain, we have validators, and all of the validators have certain amount of tokens, um, which is attached to them, right? And each of the people, like if let's say if you have NIM tokens, you will be able to like delegate tokens to the validator, and then you will get voting power proportional to the amount of stake on the network, right? So, and then you can have on-chain proposals, and then every token holder who has a delegation to the network has a say in the network. Let's say if the proposal is about changing parameters, let's say you have 1,000 tokens, you get the equivalent voting power based on the amount of tokens you have delegated. So that's like the basic premise of governance. How it works in Cosmos is that we have a Cosmos module called the governance module. Surprise, surprise. Um, and how it works is like let's say if you have a validator, and then you have, let's say you have 100 delegations. Now a proposal comes on chain, and the validator, let's say if they decide to vote yes, it is assumed by default that the delegators inherit the vote of the validator. So let's say if you are delegating to validator A, and then validator A decides to vote yes on a specific proposal, your vote by default becomes yes. Now, obviously, there are ways to change that. Let's say if you cast a vote yourself, you're going to override that vote. But in essence, the validator is your decision maker if you don't want to make decisions. And that's how governance works in the Cosmos ecosystem.
Very nice.
Right. Was that your question, Sudo?
Yes, that's a very nice primer into just governance in
Yeah.
general. Um, and maybe a bit more improvement proposals, like what are those and who can post them?
Are you asking for NIM, or
It's
is it like generally
XIP,
around improvement
XIP,
proposals?
because it's this tradition was actually started on
Right.
Bitcoin. The BIPs, so Bitcoin improvement proposals were first. The first BIP, fun fact, was actually um, submitted by Amitaki, who we're going to be mentioning today, whose project we're going to be mentioning today, and this became like basically the tradition within crypto and blockchain in general, that we have like this process where the community can propose changes, right? I sort of summarized it myself now, but anything else you wanna add there, Sash?
No, but I think the concept of improvement proposal itself is fascinating because when we talk about Governator a little more, um, we'll be talking about a specific sort of ADR. So Cosmos has something called decision records. And then one of the ADR actually enabled signing, or like account based signing, which is one of the key features that we use in Governator to make sure the tokens are secure. So overall, it's a great win for the network, and it's like nice to document things, discuss things with the community, and eventually, if it goes to governance, I feel that's like a truly decentralized way of building software.
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's why again, just to tie the big picture together for you folks who are listening, that's why I was really excited that we finally have the Governator. We'll also talk a bit about the future of the Governator, and what kind of turns it may take, and what kind of extra features and abilities it may gain. But first, let's explain what the Governator is. So, what is it? How does it work? And what can it do today?
Right. So Governator is the first step in our grand vision to enable like governance for all things using NIM. So to give a bit of context around this, I think the sort of the talk around governance, or how we want to make decision, started I think a year ago, maybe more, because I think that was around the time when Sudo and I were on a call. We were discussing, hey, you know what? We need to have discourse, we need to have a forum, but we really need to enable governance. Um, I mean, I just mentioned that we are a Cosmos chain, and then I also mentioned that we have a governance module. So obviously, the next question is going to be, okay, if you have a governance module, then why aren't you using it, right? And that's a problem in the current setup, because in Cosmos, what we usually use the bond denomination, which we call NIX. So NIX is basically only for validators. So if you want to use the governance module of Cosmos, you need to have NIX distributed, and that's not something that it's not going to happen anytime soon. So in essence, you cannot use NIM using the Cosmos modules, because it's a sort of like an inherent uh, assumption in Cosmos that it has to be the validator tokens, right? So we had to obviously build something more which can accommodate NIM. And the second problem that I don't really like about Cosmos governance, it's a very binary system, where the votes are just yes, no. You can abstain, and then they have this concept called no with veto, which is a little controversial. But then it's binary decisions, right? So let's say if you want to do polls like how we did for the Sudo's camera background, you'll have to like open four proposals and then say that vote yes on this if you want it to be Rick's garage, or vote yes on this if you want to be like the Overwatch one, which is crazy if you think about it, because you cannot have like multiple choices. And then especially in projects like NIM, where we want to take decisions like, okay, we have like 4 or 5 saturation points where people can vote on. Those sort of things cannot be done on the native Cosmos module. So we had to build something more native, and at the same time something which can accommodate our like special case of smart contracts, because all of our state doesn't live natively on chain; it lives on smart contracts, right? And there are no systems. out of the shelf systems which can just read smart contract states and then do governance. So we had to like sort of bake in custom tools and then write code so that we read smart contract states, we take a snapshot, and then make sure that it's secure at the same process. And NIM Governator was sort of like an experiment which born out of this necessity to for us to build governance, and I'm like super happy that it has come to this shape. I mean, a lot more to go, of course, but it's a start for governance of NIM.
Actually, to be
Quite a long answer there.
no, that's a perfect answer. Very nice one. And to be perfectly clear and exact, what it was born out of the Governator was when we looked at, and also node operators looked at, the process of how voting works on the forum, and how assigning roles would work, like assigning the operator role on the forum. Again, solution bolted together from a bunch of workarounds. It was not great. And then Sachin was like, okay, this needs solved. And then actually it was built fairly quickly, the initial version, which I was really happy to test with my very serious community call background, choosing vote, which was the first one. Um, all right, so I don't know when. I think I should probably bring on screen the Governator for those who haven't seen it yet. But before that, maybe let's talk about the nips that we've had so far. We have an ongoing nip. Let's talk about that last. That's actually very exciting. But we already had nip one and nip two. What do we know about these nips?
Well, both of them have passed with flying colors, thanks to everybody who participated. I'm just looking at NIP 1 and NIP 2 here. I think NIP 2 passed with, okay, NIP 2 passed with around 50% of quorum, which is huge. And I'll tell you why it's a bigger matter, because I was looking at the data of this after the vote. And then what I realized is that we have a lot of legacy nodes who are still technically bonded to the network. And then there are like a lot of dead delegations which are just delegated to the old node which never migrated. And then they're just there. And then it's not, I mean, we did see this problem when we were creating it, but then we thought we shouldn't be excluding because let's say if there is a delegator who is delegated to an old node and if they still want to participate, they can do it with the current setup. And then I was looking at the data of these nodes, and then there was this just one node who was expired. I don't know how they did it. They have not upgraded their node, but they made sure to come to Governator and cast their vote. So governance worked, but their node doesn't exist anymore. But because they're bonded to the network and they still delegated their NIM, they got like a I think it was around like 100,000 voting power, but that still, it was nice to see that governance happened even though the node wasn't there, which is like a cool fact from this. But then again, NIP 2 is what I'm like really looking forward from NIP 2 is to see how the token dynamics shift. Because if you look at the proposal which was, or with the option which was top, which is 250K, which is like 1/4 of our saturation right now. So I'm really interested to see how delegators are going to react, because there are like quite a lot of nodes who are above 500,000, 700,000. So what I'm interested to see is how delegation is going to move across network. I think one of the hypotheses that I also had, I think I was talking to some other person, is that DAOs are likely to spin up more nodes, and then the tokens might just flow towards the other nodes of the DAO. For example, let's say if you're delegating to a DAO who has 15 nodes, not all of them have like top saturated network. Like some of them will have like really saturated. There'll be like maybe 30% of the nodes which are like fully saturated, and then there will be like seven nodes which are like maybe 10 or 20% saturated. So I feel like maybe the delegation is actually going to start working as a reputation system, and tokens are going to move, which is exciting if it happens. And then obviously the um, most important thing is that everybody who is part of the delegation program is going to get more rewards, because you're going to be like 100% saturated on 250K, which is better for the network in the long
It's
run.
still, to my knowledge, we're still
What's
in the
it?
process of deciding how much the delegation amount is going to be. I'm not the owner of the delegations program anymore, so I don't keep a very close eye on this. But the problem with keeping people at 250K once the 250K saturation point is implemented is that it's basically impossible. It will be impossible to attract community delegations because people will be delegating to an already fully saturated node. And that's not recommended behavior from the community's perspective. So we'll likely have to like drop the delegation amount somewhat. And the final and someone can correct me if I'm wrong if we communicated anything about this, but I think the final amount has not been decided yet. So this will all be decided and communicated before the changes are implemented. So stay tuned for that because we're gonna be of course posting about this on all the operator channels that we have. Um, yeah,
I love spreading misinformation on the internet, but nevertheless, I think the amount which you need to reach to reach a fully saturated state, 1 million is quite a lot, but 250,000, if you look at it in the current rates, is not as much. So nodes have like better odds of being fully saturated, and then not spending somewhere in like the 40-50%, which you see most of the nodes are. Like you can see the majority is between like 40 to 60% saturated, and those nodes are likely to do much better because you don't have to reach 1 million to be fully saturated and get the best
yes.
rewards.
And not to mention that the overall distribution of rewards, if you look at all the tokens that are distributed and how like what percentage goes to like the top nodes, what percentage goes to like lower saturated nodes, is going to be more equitable, which is something that we've been trying to achieve for a long time, and that's obviously a very important like base feature of any such network. So I think it's overall a really exciting change. I hope that the operator community is just as excited as we are about it. Um, all right, with that, are we done with the NIP2 discussion? Maybe Salazar, if you could drop a link to NIP2 from the Governator, that would be great, just so people can see participation and the options and all of that good stuff. And also maybe let's link to my chat earlier with Jaya, um, who, as she does, it's her trademark move to describe the big picture. So we did that a couple of community calls ago. If you're interested to dive deeper into NIP1 and NIP2, then make sure to check that as well. And now with that, let's move on to NIP3, which is currently ongoing. So this community call is a little bit of shilling the proposal. Please, guys, if you have a node, then go and vote, and you will understand after this call why this is important. And maybe Sachin can say a few words to that effect.
To that effect. But yes, to start with, please vote, because this is something which is exciting for us. Um, Exit policy is always, sort of like this gray area for most people because,
Sash,
um, and there are like proper,
can I
yes,
stop you for a second?
yes,
Let's summarize what the
of
proposal is
course, go ahead.
about first, and
Uh-huh.
then let's put it in context. What's this proposal about?
Of course, yes. Yeah, so this proposal is straightforward. So I think if you're an operator, you have seen this drill previously in forum where we have to open up specific ports on the network so that communication can happen. So to give you a bit of background, if you're new, um, the mixed nets have something called an exit policy. So exit policy governs where you can reach out and what ports you can speak. So we primarily use this as a defense against spam. For example, it's very common for VPN providers to be abused for spamming spam mails. So let's say if your port of 25, which is SMTP, is open, then you can see that there's a lot of spam which is generated because anonymity is guaranteed. So the more anonymous you are, it's gonna attract bad people in the end, whether you like it or not. So exit policy is like one of the deterrents against it. Everybody uses it, including Tor. So they call it the reduced exit policy, where certain ports are disallowed by default on the Tor network. But of course, it's a decentralized network. If somebody wants to run a mixed node with no exit policy, with no censorship, they're free to do so. But it is applied by default to all the nodes just as a safety mechanism until we can see how we can deter spam further. That said, so this specific proposal, it asks to unblock, like I believe, 5 different ports. So these ports are basically used by, I think 3 of them are used by Monero. So Monero is the private cryptocurrency out there. And if you want to be able to speak to a Monero network, you need to use something called RPCs. So it's very similar to what we have on the network. So if you're not able to speak to the RPCs of Monero, you will not be able to broadcast transactions, right? And because these ports are not allowed in the NIM mixnet, you cannot use the NIM mixnet to make transactions on Monero. So the solution is that these ports are vetted. Like we know that these ports belong to Monero network. So this proposal basically asks the operator if they're okay with opening the ports. And similarly, the ones for DAGFi as well. So there are two ports which are used by the DAGFi network. Um, uh, Again, the similar drill. If you open this, you will be able to talk to the DAGFi network. People can use DAGFi, things like DAGFi has a cool chat. Maybe Sudo can explain the philosophy of DAGFi in a bit, but in a sense, they have like ultra private networks, they have a blockchain. So you will be able to use the network by plugging into NIM Mixnet because those ports finally unlock in the Mixnet. So if they continue to be blocked, then it just means that people will not be able to use that, and then people eventually wouldn't want to use NIM because it's blocked. So it's essential that we allow privacy protocols to operate through Mixnet. Uh, and there is no harm in this because this, in the end, exit policy is a spam trends, and we know that Monero and DAGFi is not a spam network. So there is no reason people should be voting no on this.
Yes. Not only that, and now my background and the mentions of Amir Taki are all tied together, ladies and gentlemen. Because the thing about the NIM network is that we want it to be a protocol, right? Which is on the network level provides privacy to all interactions and communications that we have on the internet. There are other things, and all the talk that you heard me speak. If you've visited any of these community calls, you already heard me talk about the privacy stack and how different privacy preserving technologies kind of come together at different parts of this stack to provide more privacy protections together than their individual parts would on their own, right? And this is such an important thing that the NIM network should do, and obviously enabling like absolute OGs of privacy technology such as Monero, which I guess is probably the most well known privacy coin out there. Is a must-have, right? And then when it comes to DarkFi, so this is a project by Amir Taki, the aforementioned Amir Taki, who is one of the biggest OGs of the crypto space in general. If you haven't seen the HBO documentary on who Satoshi may be and crypto in general, then watch it. And he is in it. Also, Rose is in it. Shout out to both of them. They're close friends of NIM, the project, and they're particularly close to my heart. And I would say that DarkFi is basically, so they are an L1 which is focused very heavily on full anonymity, uncensoredness and uncensorability, and also sovereignty. So make sure to look them up. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. They are the sort of the most essential representation of the lunar punk movement, I would say. Both these two people, so Amir and Rose, and also their project DarkFi. So it would be a big, basically a big miss not to support something as aligned with NIM's mission. Obviously, NIM is not explicitly lunar punk, but when you look at actually what we do, then you quickly understand that we are actually very much in line with the lunar punk philosophy. It is something that is very close to my heart personally. So thus the background, the Dark Forest. And please, ladies and gentlemen, go and vote, and please vote for this proposal so that anybody can use these great privacy preserving technologies, and also we can strengthen the lunar punk presence and philosophy on this planet. That was my piece for this. How was that, Sachin? Would you vote after this?
Couldn't have said it better myself. And of course, I learned a lot. So I'm voting. If I had 20 notes, I would vote yes with all of them. So please go vote,
Let's spin
guys.
up those 20 nodes and let's see. Let's just vote. Actually, since we're talking about that, what kind of protections does Governator have against such behavior? What if I just spun up 20 nodes and I had a lot of money and bought a lot of NIM tokens and staked them?
It's an excellent question. So, I mean, that was obviously one of the main things that we had to consider before building Governator, because Sybil attacks are one of the nasty things which happen to crypto, and it keeps happening. So obviously we need to have defenses against this, right? So now expanding on how NIM Governator works. So there are two concepts which makes it secure the way it is. And like first of all, let me just come out straight and say that it's not a fully on-chain solution. And there are like reasons why we chose that design. So it uses the blockchain data, it uses the smart contract state. So all of that come from our chain. It is like it's read from the chain, but the data which is stored on database essentially, right? So how it works from like the very beginning to the end is that we have a create proposal flow. So for now, it is gated, and we have like a specific whitelist. So essentially, only NIM team members will be able to create proposals right now. That's because obviously we want to open this up and make sure people can create proposals, but we are at the stage where we're really just testing it out. And then we haven't really worked out a mechanism for preventing spam. So there is no reason like somebody with a NIM address and a few NIM tokens, they just come up and then create a proposal saying that, hey, NIM airdrop is live. You click on this word, click on this link, or you vote yes, and then click on this website, and then you'll get free NIM tokens. Like there is no way for us to prevent it right now. So we really need to work on like a mechanism where we can slash people to who are submitting like fake proposals, and that's something which Cosmos has figured out. So if you want to, let's say, if on a Cosmos chain, if you want to submit a proposal, it costs tokens. So you can define an X amount of token to be like a deposit for you to create a proposal. So let's say if it's like 1,000 NIMs, and then they can create a proposal. And Cosmos has this option called No with Veto. So if the community thinks that it is a harmful proposal, like let's say a spam proposal or like something which is phishing, they can vote. They can vote with no with veto, and then if the proposal gets, I believe, more than 20% or some, I mean it's a configurable percent, but if it gets more than X% of no with veto, the deposit is slashed. So obviously there is financial loss involved. So it works as spam deterrence to a certain extent. But for now, I mean, we're not that mature yet with Governator. So we really just want to make sure that there are no spam proposals. And then speaking about creating proposals, so now let's say Sudo created the proposal, and then when he clicks like create proposal, what happens in the backend is that it waits for the next block on the blockchain, and then it takes a snapshot of the state. So let's say if it happened, let's say if Sudo clicked it now, it's going to look at the current blockchain state as of right now, and then it's going to take the all the data about the nodes, like things like the delegators, the total voting power, basically all the data you can find in the Mixnet smart contract, and then it takes a snapshot and creates a database of this information. And then if you have visited Governator, like you can look at the proposal info tab for each proposal, and then you can see that there is a snapshot ID which is tagged to each of the proposal. So why this is designed this way is that after the proposal is created, let's say if you spin up a node, or if your node just gets a million delegation, uh, that voting power is not going to count because the voting power has been frozen in the past where the proposal was created. So that makes sure that after proposals are created, people can't just come and delegate tokens, like vote their favorite reference and just undelegate, right? I mean, that's a valid risk that we have to face.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. You can see it in action. So if you just maybe click on one of the details of a proposal.
Just go in. This is the active proposal, ladies and gentlemen. This is a NIP 3. This is about the aforementioned DIM exit policy update. A quick note. All of these proposals come with a detailed forum post on the actual proposal and the thinking behind it. So if you just come to the link, the link to this proposal has been shared in the chat already, and if you just come to that link, you can access the forum post here. This is also true with the previous proposals, and for the time being, like Sachin said, you may at some point will be able to just come here to the Governator and create your own proposal. But for now, you have to post on the NIM forum, your NIP proposal, you have to basically gain just preliminary support from the community, and you also have to have two sponsors from the NIP core team for the time being. I believe that was the thing that ended up being put in NIP one, and then we can create the NIP here on the Governator for you. As you can see, we're almost at quorum. So please, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't voted yet, then let's make sure to do so. You still have almost 5 days to do so.
Thanks. And then maybe continuing the tour of Governator, you can see that button called View Snapshot on top right. So that basically is the snapshot of the state. So what we do in the state is that we look at all the nodes, node operators. We look at the total delegations. So it really doesn't matter if your self stake is high or if you have like 100 delegators. It just looks at the total saturation of your node, and then it delegates the voting power to you. But one thing that we actively do is we cap your voting power at the stake saturation, because there are nodes which has like a lot more stake, like 1.6 million, and we don't really want a node to have absurd amount of stake and then make them have like a higher say in governance. So we also use stake saturation as sort of like the soft governance cap your node can have. So even if your node has 1.6 million tokens, your saturation is like capped at 1 million. As you can see from the top node, they have a lot more, but all of them are like capped at the stake saturation level. And because it is not mutable, it is set in state and then it's just there in the database. And then the best part about this is that we have APIs for it. So even though it's not on chain, anybody can just look at the nodes that we have, just query our RPC node, and then at any point, anybody would be able to verify that this snapshot is in fact the correct snapshot and nobody has tampered with it. And then, of course, if you find discrepancies, then there are problems. But what I'm sort of trying to say is that it doesn't have to be on chain to have verifiability, because you have the data which is provided as a snapshot, and then that verifiability exists on the blockchain already. So there is always methods to verify that governance has not been compromised.
Excellent,
Um,
excellent stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
um, yeah. No, I think that's pretty much all I had to say. Except if you want to also cover on, there might be also some concerns which I have seen in community saying that you connect your wallet and then you sign, and then if people have done traditional governance, they would see that there is a vote which happens and that's like stored on the blockchain. Where in this case you just like connect your wallet and then you just make a signature and then magically you can just vote, and then you don't have to wait for 5 seconds for your vote to go through, ensure that the transaction has been included. And then let's say if you run 20 nodes and if you're a DAO and you have to vote, then it's like you wait for like 10 seconds on an average for each vote, and then you have to like switch between 20 nodes. It's a very stressful thing to do, and I honestly believe that governance should not be stressful. It should be as easy as possible, and unfortunately with the tech we have right now, if we have to build like a completely on-chain solution for Governator, it would
Yeah,
just take a lot of time for people to just vote, and then it just adds unnecessary amount of bloat. But obviously, if your risk profile was a lot higher, let's say if NIM Governator is dealing with automatic changes to the smart contract, then you have to be a lot more careful. But for a platform where we are just using it for signaling proposals, the verifiability given by snapshots and then the signature schemes that we have for login is good enough to make sure that votes are secure, and then malicious people cannot come and vote, because all of the votes or all of the sign-ins of each of the node is cryptographically verified by the backend. So enough security is what I call it, like sufficiently secure. It can be a lot more secure, but I think it's just a compromise that we have to make between speed, convenience,
yeah,
and security.
that's pretty standard. That compromise exists basically everywhere. Which all the things that at least consider these things as the thing to optimize between, right, have this trade off. And look, there is something I really, so that we have two topics left actually, and looking at the time, if we want to do Q&A as well, we should really jump over one of them, but I don't want to because we sort of already touched on a bunch of things that could happen or could be added to Governator. So I can't skip talking a little bit about the future of the Governator. Let's talk about where we might take it and what it means for the project and the community.
Yeah, I think it's good to drop some alpha, and then we can just move on quickly, right? So at least my vision, and I believe Sudo also will agree to this, is that I want to make Governator sort of like the default governance platform for all things Lim. And I believe there was a question from Rocio as well, asking if we can use it for the Squad Wealth Fund or like for giving grants in general. That's sort of the idea that we want to follow, because we want to make Governator sort of like a DAO management platform. I don't want to call it a DAO management platform, but sort of this place where NIM as a community can take decisions instead of just it being on, let's say, a place like Discourse. So, and because we have already baked in this sort of governance and then nodes, we can add votes for even, let's say, delegators, for example. So right now, the limitation that we have in Governator is that the node operators get the votes by default, and they just inherit all of the votes of delegators. So delegators may not agree with like how a node is operating and there is or how a node is voting, and they can't really do much at this point rather than just delegate from the node and then delegate to somebody else and then hope that that node does governance as you like, right? So one of the most immediate or the short-term goal is to also enable delegator voting so that not only node operators, even people who delegate tokens can vote. Um, and it's going to be an interesting mechanism because there are people who delegate to like multiple gateways or mixed nodes, and it has like varying amounts of voting power. So it can unlock like interesting dynamics in governance. Um, the other the other thing that I'm really looking forward to is maybe exposing the governance details to, let's say, community explorers if they want to integrate, or maybe even our official explorer, and then we can show stats like, okay, this gateway or this mixnet has participated in 4 out of 5 votes, and then we can also show them the vote history of how the nodes have voted in the Governator, and governance is going to become one of the more important factors maybe, because if you have NIM tokens and if you're really looking to hold it long term and stay in the decision cycle of NIM, governance becomes an important platform. So let's say there are people who, let's say, hypothetically vote no on the exit policy. There is, I mean, they might have their reason to vote no, but it sort of becomes like an important decision. So if you have a delegation to that node, you're just going to say, "Hey, I don't agree with your vote." So the reputation system of NIM gets a lot better because delegations were always meant to be a reputation system, and honestly, I've not seen it work out as well as it would work in an ideal world. So I'm hoping governance sort of stirs up that delegation movement across nodes, and then people who are working for the project or building things for the project or just participating in governance and making sure they have their say, it becomes a way for them to attract delegations as well, which is pretty cool in
Yes.
my opinion. So yeah, that's like a little bit of sprinkling some alpha in there, and then we can move on to the next topic,
All
I
soon
guess.
TM, ladies and gentlemen, somewhere between the end of next week and the end of the century. So no promises made there. All right, but these are some pretty exciting directions that the Governator could take. This really is, like I mentioned many times, just the first step. In the sort of like on the path of meaningful community governance and decentralized governance of the NIM network and community. So that's very exciting. I hope I can bring you on another one of these calls fairly soon and talk about the new features of the Governator. But before we jump into the community questions, I also wanted to just quickly talk to you about the chain upgrade, which recently happened. Let's also take this a bit basic. Can you give us like a few for those who are not even familiar with blockchains at all? They've never heard of one. They don't know what they are for. What's a chain upgrade and how does it work?
Right. Okay, how do I start? So all blockchains in the end, especially the proof of stake networks, or at least in the context of Cosmos, they are just an app. Like let's say how you run your NIM node, it's the binary which you run, and then that sort of comes together um, and then produces blocks for you, and that's how blockchains work. So we have like about 25 validators now, and all of them have to run a specific version of the validator binary, which we call nixd. and then that comes into consensus, right? So just like how we have release cycles for nym node or like our uh, gateways and all of the nodes, basically we have a release cycle for the chain as well. Now obviously the chain is a little more mature, so it doesn't require like weekly updates, but there are often times where security researchers come in, and then like report bugs. For example, you guys might have heard of this emergency upgrade which happened about 5 to 6 months back. So there was the severe vulnerability which was found in one of the Cosmos modules, and then we had to like upgrade the chain within the next day. Otherwise, malicious attackers could come and halt our chain. So fun story there. We were in the middle of this chain upgrade. So chain upgrade is very simple. Like everybody stops their node at the same time, because it's a consensus machine. You cannot swap your binaries at any point in time because it's going to break the consensus mechanism. So how chain upgrades work is that everybody has to stop their node at a single block time, which means that the chain is going to temporarily halt, because there is not enough nodes to come to governance, and they just switch over the node to the next binary, and then the process starts. So as long as you have like 66% of the nodes running the same binary, it's going to have the chain upgrade chain running. So that's the basic of chain upgrade. But what really excites me about this chain upgrade is that it brings in something called hyperlane. So if you're not familiar with hyperlane, please look it up. It's one of our it's a bridging protocol, which can be used to permissionlessly bridge from any chain to any chain. So Hyperlane supports like 140 chains so far. It has a link to Arbitrum, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, like any chain you can think of, and it bridges like billions of tokens in value. Um, and why we are using Hyperlane is because we want to tap into the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem. Um, what this means is that we are going to open a bridge to the Binance ecosystem, which is the Web3 wallet ecosystem where they have dexes like PancakeSwap. And if you have been following the markets, you can see that PancakeSwap is sort of coming back up in the volume. And then it would be really nice to have like maybe like a NIM BNB pair and NIM USD pair on PancakeSwap so that you have decentralized way of buying NIM. And what this also means is that we can unlock the liquidity of the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem for NIM VPN. So the eventual goal is maybe have one-click payments from any BNB chain. So let's say if you have a meme coin on Binance Smart Chain, or if you have some BNB lying around, you'll be like able to swap it for NIM tokens and buy a VPN subscription in one click, which is like a really nice thing to do. It's like if you, I mean, of course, you can use other tokens like Monero, but what I feel it unlocks is like the whole ecosystem of the Binance Web3 wallet, which is very huge. And because PancakeSwap is coming up in popularity, it's always nice to have more DEX liquidity because it stabilizes price movements. It gives people more options. You don't have to do KYC and go to Kraken and then buy tokens. You can just like uh, use your Binance wallet. And these days, I think the Web3 wallet and the Binance exchange wallet is integrated. So you can just like move tokens from your exchange, go to the DEX, and then buy VPN. That's like a nice flow which people can have. So I'm really looking forward to
Yep,
this
that
one.
sounds actually very exciting. And also, guys, if you missed it, Dexes are definitely coming way up, and actually they are likely to be driving the next bull run, or at least be there as the means of people getting access to crypto. So it's kind of shifting a lot towards Dexes, which I think is really nice to see. So anyways, that's a bit of rambling to add on to the end there, Sachin. Very exciting stuff. Thanks for all the answers. But now we have to jump into the community questions because we only have 10 minutes left. Are you ready, sir?
Let's go.
Right.
Let's see what the community has to ask.
Um, so wait, we have actually a lot of questions from Bump Me Up today. I'm going to start with the one that I believe he sent um, on Matrix. So I'm not going to be able to put this on screen, ladies and gentlemen. You just have to believe me that we got this question. All right. So, question: does the voting power depend on the number of delegates, or the delegation sum? That is, if I have owned a node for a long time and always keep it up to date, ensuring its continuous operation on the network, but if one of the main delegates leave, does my vote become useless? And also the question continues. Perhaps more coefficients need to be added, such as self bond or node version, node initialization block, and simply node ID. Blockchain stores simple node uptime metric and etc. It is not difficult to launch a node, and it costs 100 NIM, or you have to bond 100 NIM. He means, are there any plans to protect against malicious voting? I guess the second part of this question you sort of addressed. Let's talk about the first part. So why not make it a bit more, bit less, like straight up, one token is one vote um, on the node, like staked tokens equal one vote. Why not add certain weights to different nodes based on their age, based on their performance, based on a bunch of other factors like that? What are your thoughts?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's again a very interesting option, but it's not as simple as it looks because we are just suddenly opening up a can of worms, and then we are sort of building this system. So obviously, if you have to take a decision on, let's say, what is included, the obvious first decision that we had to take is: do we just keep it as just the NIM nodes, or do we also give voting power to the delegators who are delegating to an old node which doesn't exist? Like, now obviously I could have just said, hey, if you want to vote, you just have to be delegated to a NIM node, right? And then again, you have to take multiple decisions like this, and it's obviously based on a lot of preferences of a lot of people. Some people would want to delegate to a node which is like lower saturated, or some people just want to delegate to a node which has like, let's say like 90% saturation, and make sure that um, like they get more rewards, right? So there are a lot of dynamics in play, and then and when we start like sort of putting in things like node uptime or node ID into all of these things, which suddenly means that even though the delegator might not know about it, we are sort of indirectly telling the delegator that your token or your voting power in the network is slightly less because your validator or your mix node or your gateway is not operating um, at the same level, because it might be a new node, but and then I might have delegated to that node to say that, okay, I want to support this node, he's a new person in the network, and then you're telling the delegator, hey, your vote doesn't count as much because you're delegating to a new node. That sort of creates a lot of problems in the governance equation. But if you just keep it simple in terms of the token, and let's say one token is equal to one vote, then it's really simple. Everybody is on the equal footing. Like no specific NIM tokens has more value than other NIM tokens. Like one of the fundamentals of governance is that one NIM is equal to one vote has to exist. If you want to introduce systems like some of the NIM tokens are more valuable than other NIM tokens because of external factors, um, that sort of messes up the governance. I've not really, I'm not a game theorist, so I've not really like, thought about the problems which might come because of it. But the scope creep is very real, because if you want to introduce X, let's say if you want to introduce uptime, some people are going to say, hey, why not just uptime? I also want this, and then you might have now come up with a NIP and then have a community discussion. So if the community feels that there is a better way to do governance, by all means, I mean, we are happy to hear about it. So it could be the next NIP 4 or NIP 5. So if you have like a really solid, well-researched plan to make sure governance is a little more dynamic, we are all yes. And then if the community thinks that it is the best way to go about it, obviously we are going to build our governance systems around
Yes,
it.
Bump. I agree. And me personally, even though I do hear you, Sachin, and these are great points, and mission creep is real, and even just like how to calculate quorum when different tokens are worth sort of different amounts of votes can become like very murky very quick. And I'm guessing as soon as you start like thinking about this problem a bit more deeply, the more and more possibilities to abuse or yeah, or mess with the system arise. But in general, I would really like to see, if possible, some way of it could be node age, it could be like Bomb said, node version, maybe like performance, maybe like a combination of these. How um, our best operators who have been with us for a long time, who have supported this project for a long time, who are like always on top of things, and they always keep their nodes running smoothly. That sort of kind of is like a testament to being real supporters of the project. And I do agree that that there's an argument to make, that their vote should count a bit more than just the 100 nym that someone spun up a node with just to be able to vote. Yeah, so that's right. But obviously, this will have to come down with come as a result of a bunch of analysis that we have to do, and see the feasibility and the gameability and all of that good stuff. Big thanks for the question, Bump. Very thought provoking, and um, a lot of questions from um, a lot of questions from Bump today. Next one, I think this is going to be quick. You sort of addressed it already. This one I can put on screen because he asked this one in the YouTube live chat. Question one: as far as I understand, voting at this stage is not recorded on the blockchain. Is implementation planned?
I think we are going to look at putting things on the blockchain only when the sort of like the risk of Governator becomes high. So let's say if we are implementing things. So one of the things that we are thinking of the medium to long term is like automatic uh, automatic executions. So let's say if you open a proposal to change the mixed parameters, and if the governance passes, then the governator will have the ability to just change the smart contract parameters directly on the blockchain. So obviously, when it comes to risk profiles like this, we will have to build things on chain because it is making changes on the chain directly, right? So we also need auditability and accountability there. But at this moment, it's okay that I am of the opinion uh, it's not a big deal that if you're not on the blockchain because to build this, I mean, there is a very long answer on the engineering feasibility, but I'm going to skip it. I'm just going to say that it's a lot of engineering overhead and it's just going to add a lot of complexity even to people because voting becomes a problem. Like you sign like a couple of like two or three Kepler pop-ups for every node that you have. That's not something that people are going to be okay with, and as a reason people are just not going to vote on proposals, right? So quorum is something that is very important for us, and we want to make sure that people it's as easy as it's like very easy for people to vote right now using this process. I want to make it even simpler, right? If you want to make it extremely that simple fast but at the same time have enough security guarantees, uh, the system that we have right now is fine. I can again go on explaining about how you're connecting wallet and then signing the initial message secures it, but I feel we will not have questions. We will not have time for more questions, so I'll just skip it for now. But I'll just tell you maybe I can share more details in a chat somewhere.
All right, big thanks for that. Thanks for another great question. Next one is from Jason. Thanks for the question, Jason. XP feature is cool. Will this be an NSL? Um, I can't remember when we mentioned XP. I guess this is just probably a general question, right? And this is more a question for me. We do have points in NSL, but they don't work like XP because they reset at the end of every season. Um, I think it could be nice. It could be nice to add XP, and yeah, maybe actually let's do that, Salazar. Let's take note of this and implement XP. Maybe it's just a matter of keeping the points that people collect throughout the season as XP for the next season, and then we can do it that way. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for the suggestion. We'll think about it. I think it's a cool idea. Um, and wait, I'm looking for questions from someone other than Bump, just so we don't skip anybody else.
Some really good questions from Bump
Yes,
today. Thank you for
yes.
those
Okay, so
one.
let's go with a public question number two from Bump. Did you use Cosmos's native voting code to create the Governator? I know that Cosmos has built-in voting system for validators.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we cannot really use it because it is tied with Nix tokens. But the voting system, especially things around quorum, having like 33% of the quorum to get your proposal to pass, all of that is inspired from the Cosmos module because governance is really what got me to Cosmos. I'm a huge decentralized governance maxi, especially on chains like some of the Cosmos chains like Atom, where they have replaced entire foundations using governance. So it's a very powerful tool and very underrated tool if you like really use it right. So a lot of the concepts of Governator is borrowed, inspired from Cosmos, but it's not Cosmos based. It's a custom solution that we have built.
Yep. Very much agreed, by the way, on the importance of governance. Um, Next one, let's try to keep it short because the call should already be over, but there's so many good questions today. So, question number three: will there be incentives for active participation in voting? For example, a badge for the node in the Explorer. We already kind of addressed this. So, yes, ideally, yes. So, we would want to introduce social dynamics in the Explorer, maybe elsewhere as well. Incentives as in financial, never, but incentives as in like social tracking of your votes, definitely. Did I leave anything out, Sachin?
No, as a quick side note to bump, we are happy to expose APIs for Governator once it's stable. So, I mean, you can even show like give people badges on Nemesis and then show their governance participation. So you will have APIs for it. So it'll be nice if community explorers can also include that. And then you give like, I mean, obviously we cannot have all the features in our official explorer. So I'm happy to see what community builds with the new APIs will have for governance, and then how community will build filters based on governance is something that I'm looking
Yep,
forward to see.
definitely. And then next up is the last one we're going to have time for because this is going to be a very quick answer. Question four, which is optional. How is the BMB slash NIM bridge development going? We've kind of already addressed this one. As far as I know, the BMB chain was originally designed on Cosmos SDK, which is, of course, what the Nix blockchain is also on. Which path have you chosen? IBC, Binance Bridge, Thorchain, or Peg Zones?
It is Hyperlane, as I mentioned. So Hyperlane is the module which we are going to be using to bridge the tokens. IBC would have been a good preference. IBC does they did come up with recently called something called Eureka, which supports Ethereum, but unfortunately there is no support for Binance Smart Chain yet. So the next obvious solution for us was to use something like a hyperlane, which is permissionless. There are other solutions like Axelar out there, but they cannot like I'm not really confident on them for the long term. So based on our research, Hyperlane was the best way to go forward about it, and then it's going to be coming on production soon. So we already have sandbox connections to Binance Smart Chain. And then on production, we are it's a little more extra steps in security in production, so we are working on it. But
Yeah,
soon.
big thanks for that. And I'm sorry, but I do have to. I didn't scroll down far enough while looking for extra questions. And there's a good one from Rocio, and I think we should really answer this one. Question: does this governor or will this governor be implemented for the NIM Squad League or community decisions? Um, yeah, I'll leave you answer, Sachin.
Absolutely, but not soon. But I think this it would be really nice to have, because if our goal is eventually to have governance on a single platform, it's only natural that we bring things like NSLs or community decisions on Governator as well. So maybe when Governator V2 launches, we could have something like that, but we do not have a concrete timeline for
Yes,
it.
so soon TM, but yes, Sachin and I are definitely thinking about this. Obviously, the end game, as I mentioned many times, there are only technical limitations, but the end game is for the Squad Wealth Fund to be community managed fundamentally, or governance, like community governed, right? So setting up the appropriate guardrails for that to happen. We now have a tool, but that tool right now is kind of far away, so we need to bring it closer and come up with like nifty dynamics and all the rule sets and everything else, so that it makes sense and the funds are secure, and you guys can be more involved in making decisions when it comes to the Squad Wealth Fund, which belongs to the community, of course, as I said multiple times. Very exciting stuff. Also, just getting back to the previous question, it's always very exciting to see all kinds of stuff cooking around the Binance front. I hear a lot of like whispers, from Harry, and I see like all kinds of images popping up on our Telegram chat. So exciting times, all in all. And it was even more exciting to have you on, sir, on this here community call. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
The pleasure is mine, sir. It was actually a very fun discussion. So thank you for having me on this call. And yes, please vote on the three.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to vote. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today, and thanks everyone, and especially Bump for the great questions. We're gonna have to wrap up here. As you know, there's this little tradition that we have here at NIM. Whenever you join a community event such as this one, you get a POAP in return to commemorate us hanging out together. So you know where to go. It's the usual place, which is, I'm putting it on screen now. So you need to go to nim.com/go/POAP, and the secret phrase for claiming your POAP is, drum roll, exit polarinator. Exit polarinator. Yes. This is a this is like a mashing together of exit policy and Governator. Sachin and I felt very creative, so we came up together with this excellent secret phrase. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. Be quick because the claim process will only be open as usual for about 15 minutes. Big thanks again for joining. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to claim your POAP. Have a nice day, everyone, and see you all next week.